Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Atlanta, part of the SCG Tour, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside Kevin Jones, the daddy.
Daddy?
How you doing?
Pretty good. Just took a loss, but we got time to right the ship.
Can't win them all.
No, you most certainly cannot win them all.
So you're bringing the blue-red Emerge deck, kind of like the blue-red Zombies deck here. Now, we saw this deck a long while back, as the Grixis Emerge, strategy was a thing.
Yeah,
but Standard had changed a lot.
Right when Kaladesh first came out.
And now we've kind of arrived at a point where you can play the strategy again. The deck has gotten some new tools. There's no copycat combo running around, so you get to kind of do your dirtily thing that Kevin Jones likes to do with blue and red cards.
Yep. This deck is more like that Steve Rubin played this. It was like a Magic Online deck, Fevered Vision. Steve Rubin played it at GP, at one of the GPs, I think it was Pittsburgh, or and maybe New Jersey, I'm not sure which one, but that's like, this deck is more like that deck than it was like the Grixis deck. The Grixis deck was really weird. Played like Haunted Dead and like the mill creature with like energy or whatever, Minister of Inquiries. Yeah. Very different, but still, similar strategy of cheating the zombies into play to make Amalgam broken, and then flashing back Kozilek's Return and making your value creatures like make your Deep Fiends, they mitigate the opportunity cost of that or whatever.
And by cheating your zombies into play, we're talking about Stitchwing Scab and Advanced Stitchwing. Yeah. You're discarding them to your cards that require you to discard.
To the looting effects.
So you have Tormenting Voice and Cathartic Voice.
Cathartic Reunion.
Cathartic Reunion, sorry. Along with the new card, this is what we want to talk about here. We've got the Rager, the Bloodrage Brawler right here. 4/3 for 2 mana, but you got to discard a card.
Yeah, so generally in a world where there's lots of Fatal Pushes, Grasp, Harness, whatever, there's a lot of efficient answers to a 2 mana creature, even a 2 mana 4/3. Oath of Chandra, probably not really played anymore after Guardian got banned, but whatever. So in that metagame, like this card, kind of weak, but then the opportunity cost of discarding a card is mitigated by the fact that you like actively need to have these cards in your graveyard for your deck to function correctly.
Sure.
So this card, like, it's almost a bonus in a lot of games, and you can like sometimes you don't have enough time to cast the front side of Kozilek's Return, and like you just discard it, and then you can like get this thing back, because it's like you do something on 2 mana, then you like get this thing back on 3 mana, and then you cast Deep Fiend and Flashback Return on 4 mana.
Right. And
then like you never had a time to cast the actual Kozilek's Return, so sometimes you need a way to get into the graveyard, and there's 10 of these effects and 3 lightning axes that give you discard outlets, or so to speak. And one of the other reasons why I like this deck this card is because in undefined format, like one after we just had bannings and a new set, I like to be aggressive, and this card punishes like, double tap land draws or evolving wilds or whatever, just people attuning and not doing anything else. Like, it's kind of aggressive, and I like that because you can discard a zombie to this, and then on turn 3 you can pass and you can leave up this Aftermath card. Right. Then if they do something that you care about, you could always mana leak, and if not, you can get back your zombie and hopefully an Amalgam, and then you can even discard this as the other card you get back to the zombie, and then you can tap their lands down.
Sure, you're just going off at that point.
And then you get like, you go like 10U, tap your lands 10U. It's like kind of a
easy game.
Yeah, it's like kind of a nut draw, but it doesn't always happen. But I've done some crazy stuff, and then deck also chains Deep Fiends pretty well, which is the other
That's kind of the other half of this deck is the Elder Deep Fiend portion of the deck. But I think we got to mention a couple of things. We've had this deck on camera between you and Zach Voss, someone you kind of brainstormed with this deck, who has kind of a
pretty close to the same 60. He's got a bunch of weird cards in his sideboard. He's got the Red God and
well, a lot of the early drafts of this deck we saw was kind of using Hazoret as a way to facilitate your discard spells and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you don't have Fiery Temper, which I don't.
Right, we need to figure out why you don't have Fiery Temper in this deck. Patrick Sullivan needs an answer. I need an answer. Look at all these discard outlets.
Yeah, the card it's just a fine card. I'm not super excited by it. I really like, the deck's pretty mana hungry, so sometimes the Fiery Temper won't be able to be cast like on curve, whether you have because you want to cast something like this on turn 2 almost every game, and then like you want to cast Fiery Temper with Lightning Axe a lot, but like you don't always have the extra mana to do that. Because like the most important thing to do is cast one of these on turn 2, one of these on turn 3, and then sometimes you have Wandering Fumaroles, so like you need to, you know, play that turn so that you have double blue for Deep Fiend on turn 4. And a lot of times Fiery Temper is just like a casualty of how mana hungry this deck is.
Right.
I'm not saying it's 100% right that I don't have it. It could be like minus a Wretched Gryff, minus a K return, minus a Tormenting Voice, plus 3 Fiery Tempers or something like that. And you still probably have enough discard spells, and the added removal mitigates the loss of the Kozilek's return. But like, I felt like the format would be pretty aggressive. I don't hate the Temper in the aggressive metagame, but I really, really love Kozilek's return in the aggressive metagame. I thought the Flyers would do a fantastic job of pressuring Gideon and stuff like that, so I just wanted to make sure I could clear the board.
Yeah, so your deck is just kind of taxed on mana, and you just don't really have the time to set up Fiery Temper the way you would really want to.
Yeah,
so
you also need like blue-red dual, blue land. So you need like triple blue, double red by turn 4. But it doesn't look like that because it's all in pieces, but like what you see is like a whole bunch of single mana cost spells besides Deep Fiend. But like what happens is you actually have to do them all at the same time. Like that's how the deck works. So the deck is really mana intensive, and like sometimes you will be like, you'll get like Spire Bluff, Wandering Fumarole, Island, Sanctum, and then like nothing that into that plan, like because you're like throwing this thing into play or whatever, or you're throwing this thing into play and then casting something here and then emerging off of it or whatever. Lightning Axe plus put this thing into play.
Sure.
You don't always have the extra mana. I don't know.
Acceptable answer.
It's kind of a roundabout answer. It's kind of hard to justify, honestly, being like, oh, Fiery Temper's not good enough, because it's not exactly that, but it's like, I just felt like it wasn't super necessary. I was not really thrilled about the 3 damage anyway. It does make like your looting effects and your discard cards a little bit better, but aside from that, it's all right.
All right, so you just want to kind of do what your game plan is, which is, have one of your discard outlet and your draw spells. 2, get one of your zombies into play on 3, hopefully getting amalgams and stuff like that. And then from there, you want to try to assemble a Elder Deep Fiend lock.
Yeah, you just get a Deep Fiend into play around turn 4, maybe turn 5. Threaten to flashback K return. You don't actually have to, though, because like if you have a nice board state, sometimes you're just like, Deep Fiend trigger Kozilek's return, and they're like, oh, do a bunch of weird things, and you're like, all right,
now I won't
flash it back.
Sure.
I'll just break Sanctum, go get another one, because you can stack these however order you want. So then like you can stack it so that Sanctum is on the stack first, and then K return's on the stack on top of it. So like the K return would resolve first, and then when they do something, you choose not to do that, and then the Sanctum's still on the stack. So then you go and get another one and flash it back next turn. Off the other, you Deep Fiend off the other Deep Fiend, and then you flashback K return when their shields are down, when they didn't Avacyn or whatever,
Right, that was the strength of the Emerge strategy, was being able to just chain the Deep Fiends, and then you kind of got them locked how you wanted.
It was like the deck that MGG played at the Invitational the one time, where they played like Sultai, Kozilek's return deck.
Oh yeah,
and
you don't need to cast this on the front end.
Well, it's just like, does Band Company sack their Selfless Spirit or not? And then if they're like, all right, sack or Selfless Spirit, you're like, all right, I'll just do it next turn.
So how did you end up on this deck? Were you originally playing Saheeli and kind of audible to this once it got the midweek ban, or were you kind of always looking at this type of strategy?
Had this proxied out around the pre-release, and then just in case they banned the cat deck, and then they didn't, so I just put like Glorybringer in 4-color Saheeli and was going nuts and just crushing, and I was super excited, and then they just banned it on like Wednesday night, and I'm like, all right, well, good thing I have the blue-red deck proxied up. And then I got really like stoked on this interaction between Bloodrage Brawler and Reduce to Rubble, as making it like, because usually leaving 3 mana up is a lot. Like you can do so much with 3 mana in Standard, and there's so many powerful things that like leaving up mana and wasting it is like really frustrating a lot of the time. So like this card allows you to like, Reduce to Rubble allows you to have like something to do with your mana when you don't want to buy back the Scobs. And like it doesn't force you to buy back the zombies and like put you in a weird spot when you might not want to do it, or you don't have an amalgam or whatever. And then like when you do decide to do it, like you can just get them back end of turn, and then you have a counter spell up. So you're like attack you for 10 and then just leak whatever you do, lock your lands down and attack you again. And like a lot of times that gets it done. it puts a lot of pressure on them to have like several 1 or 2 mana instant speed removal spells, which not everybody has. Like there were turns where I played against like red-green decks where I just like did that and then like deep fiended them, locked their board on turn 4, deep fiended them, locked their board on turn 5, and like just, you know,
yeah.
They got 1 turn out of like 6 to play sorcery speed spells.
Sure.
And like that's kind of messed up.
By then it's too late.
Yeah, it's just kind of messed up.
All right. So your other emerge card is the Wretched Gryff here, just kind of filling out the package.
Yeah. So with 3 Sanctums in the deck, you really want to be able to chain, and Wretched Gryff is a little bit easier to cast than Deep Fiend, and replaces itself, which like gives you some awesome play patterns like cast Wretched Gryff off of Stitchwing Scob using Island and Sanctum, and then leaving open Blue-Red Duel, breaking Sanctum, going to get Deep Fiend, and then like you can either get back Stitchwing Scob and Amalgams with the other 2 mana, or you can cast Deep Fiend off Wretched Gryff, so it just gives you like a lot of flexibility in your mana.
Yeah.
And I also just think that sometimes you really, really need to flashback K-Return, and the fifth thing is worth it.
Cool.
Because this is kind of built to be like the version that maximizes the potential of K-Return, whereas some of the other versions are like, oh, I'm Hazoreting, or I'm Fiery Tempering, or I'm really aggro, or I'm cycling, or what, you know, some people are Drake Havening or Fever Visioning. I just wanted to like get this card in the graveyard, be it casting it or discarding it, flash it back as soon as possible, and then like mop up.
Sure. All right, let's move on to the sideboard here. Full 4 Fever Visions here on the board. We saw this card kind of in the main deck back when Steve Rubin was playing the deck.
Yeah.
Kind of situational and not great when you don't know what the meta is going to be probably week 1.
Overestimated the amount of Mardu I would see. It's possible that this is just a sampling bias on my part because I have not played against it yet. And some other people said they played against a fair amount of it. But I just thought that Fevered Visions in a world of like humans, Mardu, and black-red aggro is like not where you want to be. Mm-hmm. But if everyone is playing like black-green Delirium and control decks, it's obviously insane.
Sure.
But against the aggro decks, it's not good. So I like have a main deck that's good against the aggro decks, and then like a sideboard that's better against the control decks, but still gives you like fills some of the holes that you have against some of the more aggressive decks, while also having like a deck that's naturally good against a control deck, because like they can't counter the blue zombies, and you get back Amalgams and they can't counter the Amalgam activation. Like they only have so many disallows in their 75 or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, eventually you're just going to run them out.
You just get to grind them out with the uncountable
zombies. You just attack them for like
zombies.
9, and you don't have to actually cast a spell. It's pretty sweet. So I figured that there was some built-in resilience to control, and I wanted to build my deck with aggro in mind for the first week. And that's why
got
the
some
Fever Visions are in the sideboard.
More removal and some more counter spells here in the sideboard. Yeah. Magma Spray kind of dealing with Scrounger. You got your Dispels, your Disallow. I want to talk about Chandra and then Nahiri's Wrath as kind of the 2 standout cards here in the sideboard.
Yep. Okay, so first off, Nahiri's Wrath is another discard outlet when you... Well, there's 2 things it does really well. One thing is kill Gideon, which is a huge problem for you. On any remotely stable board, Gideon just takes over because you can't kill it with K-Return, you can't kill it with Lightning Axe, it pumps through tokens that are emblems to make your K-Return front side bad or whatever. It just does a lot of infuriating things. Your Scabs have 3 power and can't actually kill it on the first go-round. So like there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's pretty good against you. So Nahiri's Wrath kills Gideon, and it gives you another way to get your zombies in the graveyard. A lot of the time when you're playing against the Gideon deck, like they might be Mardu and have pushes or disintegrations, and like you don't really love Bloodrage Brawler heads up against Toolcraft Exemplar either.
Sure.
So like I'm probably boarding some of these out against Mardu, and then like boarding into Nahiri's Wrath and being more of like a control version of the deck. And Nahiri's Wrath helps facilitate that. And the other thing that it does really well is just like, you know, get a Scob into the graveyard. It's like, oh, I'll kill your Glorybringer, I'll discard this thing or whatever, and then I can bring it back next turn. And
not a bad option.
It just alleviates pressure, and like if your deck has enough time to dirtle and you're not under enough pressure, like you're gonna eventually do busted things. You'll draw an emerge creature and go chaining or whatever.
Sure. What about Chandra?
Chandra is just like a good card. It's the only card in my sideboard, aside from like the Disallow and the Dispels, that is in my sideboard purely because it's just a good Magic card. I figured that like the graveyard hate in this format is less disgustingly bad than the graveyard hate has been in the past. So because of that, I think you legitimately have to have some sort of like flexibility in your deck with regards to people boarding in like Scarab Feast or that stupid cat that sacrifices and exiles everything or whatever, like, or Magma Spray or something like that. And so like if they're just trying to like, you know, Coffin Purge you or Magma Spray you, you're just like, Planeswalker that is objectively powerful and will allow me to like get incremental damage from my looting things if I make an emblem or whatever, you know?
Okay. Lastly, Drakehaven, you have one copy here in the sideboard. This is a card that kind of has a lot of synergies with what your deck does. I'm surprised you don't have more, you know, copies available to
so
you.
Todd Anderson, and I think he did it with Brad. They did a video on Premium this week, a versus video, and he played like it might have been last week, but he played like a blue-red deck like this, a blue-red Emerge deck or whatever. And he had Drakehaven in his deck, and it was like way too slow against Mardu. And I was like, I don't really want to be caught, you know, unawares against an aggressive format. And like, I'm sure the card is good, and like, it'll probably be in my deck in the coming weeks when I know more of like if it's justifiable to play Censor or not. How fast is everything? Can I add a bunch of Censors and like, you know, slow down a little bit and cut the brawlers and then like make removal worse versus making like bad mana bases worse, which is what I'm trying to do the first week. I think it's a fair hedge. Drakehaven is good. It's just a little bit hard to quantify how good it is, because like I'm not always sure how much free mana I have, not always sure how much time I have, and like both of those things are important quantities to be able to gauge when you're playing a card like Drakehaven. So I was just concerned that I didn't have enough information to maximize it. But when I'm boarding in the Fever Visions and going against another like attrition-based deck, I'll board it in and I'll go nuts with it. All
right, sounds good. Well, you're 5-2 so far. You got a couple rounds left here.
Yeah, we took a hit to Black-Green Snake, took a hit to a blue-red control deck, boarded out all my removal, got Dragon Master outcasted.
Yep.
So oops.
Well, now you know.
But yeah, we beat some other stuff. We beat Black-Green, Red-Green, and Humans. So looking okay.
All right.
You know.
Well, you got to get one of your next two, and then hopefully we'll be seeing you
play
tomorrow.
Some Magic tomorrow, some bonus Magic if you will.
Yeah. Love to have you here. So Kevin, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard.
My pleasure, Nick.
Keep doing your thing. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all week long for the action here in Atlanta.